I need a wife for the trip. Will you come? The millionaire said to the young woman. She almost ignored him when he called her that strange name. If she had left the room at that moment, her life would have continued on the same course as always. Beatrice Luna, 28, was cleaning the last crystal glasses in the mansion's kitchen when she heard Benjamin Corral's voice echoing down the hall. She had been working for the 45-year-old businessman, known throughout Guadalajara for his luxury hotels and difficult personality, for 3 years. He rarely spoke to employees beyond what was strictly necessary. Beatrice, can you come here for a moment? He shouted from his office. She dried her hands on her apron and walked down the marble hallways of the house on Vallarta Avenue. Benjamin was behind his desk, nervously shuffling some papers. He seemed different, less imposing than usual. Sit down, he said, pointing to the leather chair in front of him. Beatrice hesitated. In 3 years, she had never sat in that chair. Is something wrong? Mr. Corral, not exactly wrong. He sighed and looked her straight in the eye. I need a wife for the trip. Will you come? Beatrice blinked several times. Sure, she had heard wrong. What? My sister Camilla is getting married in Puerto Vallarta next weekend. The whole family will be there. I've been making up excuses for 5 years, so I wouldn't have to bring someone to weddings and birthdays. Benjamin stood up and began pacing around the room. I can't miss it this time. She's my only sister. But I don't understand, sir. They always ask me when I'm going to get married, when they're going to meet someone special. I'm sick of those questions. He stopped in front of the window overlooking the garden. I need you to come with me as if you were my wife. 3 days, 5-star hotel, all expenses paid. You would earn the equivalent of 6 months' salary. Beatrice felt her heart racing. 6 months' salary. With that money, she could finally help her mother Teresa pay for the house in Tlaquepaque and maybe even afford to go back to school. Why me? She asked in a voice lower than she wanted. You're polite, intelligent. You know how to behave in social situations. I've seen you talking to guests when we serve dinner here. Benjamin sat down again. And most importantly, you know me. You know how I act, how I talk. It would be easier to pretend to be natural. But won't it be weird for them? I mean, you with an employee. No one has to know you work here. We'll say we met at a social event. He clasped his fingers on the desk. What do you say? Beatrice looked around the luxurious office. On the walls were photos of Benjamin with politicians, business people, important people. In one of them, he looked younger, smiling next to an elegant woman she had never seen in the house. Can I think about it until tomorrow? Sure, but I need your answer by tomorrow night. The trip is on Thursday. Beatrice got up to leave, but he called her back. Beatrice, she turned around. I know it's a strange situation, but I promise you it will be just work, nothing more. She nodded and left the office with her head spinning. As she walked home along Lopez Mateos Avenue in the strong afternoon sun, she tried to imagine what it would be like to pretend to be Benjamin Corral's wife for 3 days. That night, lying in her small bed in her apartment in Zapopan, Beatrice stared at the ceiling and wondered if she was crazy for even considering the proposal. But then she thought of her mother, the studies she had given up, the life she could have with that money, and for the first time in years, she felt that perhaps an opportunity was knocking at her door. The next morning, Beatrice woke up with the certainty that she would say yes. She arrived at the mansion earlier than usual and found Benjamin drinking coffee on the terrace. He was wearing a light blue shirt that highlighted his dark eyes. At 45, he was in good shape and had that air of authority that she had always noticed but never observed so closely. Good morning, she said, more nervous than she had expected. Good morning, Beatrice. Did you sleep well? Yes, sir, and I've decided to accept your proposal. Benjamin closed the newspaper and smiled for the first time since she had met him. It was a genuine smile that completely transformed his face. Great, then we have a lot to prepare in 2 days. He stood up. First of all, you can call me Benjamin when we're alone practicing. It will sound more natural. Okay, Benjamin, the name felt strange in her mouth, but she nodded in agreement. Now we need a story. How did we meet? How long have we been together? When did we get married? He took out a notebook. How about we say we met 2 years ago at an art exhibition at the Cabañas Cultural Institute? I've never been to an art exhibition, but you can learn enough in 2 hours on the internet. Benjamin sat down next to her. Beatrice, If we're going to do this, it has to be convincing. My family is very gossipy. They spent the entire morning creating the story of their fake relationship. Married for a year, living together for 2, she worked as an administrative assistant at a tourism company. Benjamin even made up the name of the company, Horizontes de Mexico. What about the wedding ring? Asked Beatrice. I've already thought about that. He opened a drawer and took out a small blue velvet box. It was my grandmother's. It will be perfect. When Beatrice opened the box, she found a delicate ring with a small sapphire surrounded by diamonds. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever held in her life. It's gorgeous, she whispered. Try it on. The ring fit perfectly on her ring finger. For a moment, they both stared at her hand in silence. Now you need some appropriate clothes, Benjamin said, breaking the moment. I'll give you some money so you can buy what you need. Nothing too flashy, but elegant. Remember, you're going to be my wife, not a tourist. That afternoon, Beatrice walked through downtown Guadalajara looking for a store where she could buy elegant clothes without spending a fortune. She ended up finding some really cool pieces in a boutique near the cathedral. When she returned to the mansion, she found Benjamin in the garden watering the plants. She had never seen him do something so simple and homely. How was the shopping? She asked without taking her eyes off the flowers. Fine. I bought a dress for the wedding, some casual clothes, I guess. Can I ask you a question? Sure. Why have you never really gotten married? Benjamin stopped watering and stared at the horizon. The question hung in the air for so long that Beatrice thought he wasn't going to answer. I came close once, he said at last. 10 years ago, we were going to get married, but she realized that I loved my work more than I loved her. She was right. He turned to Beatrice. Since then, I've preferred to avoid complications. And your family doesn't understand. My family thinks that everyone has to be happy in the same way. Get married, have children. Sundays at grandma's house, he shrugged. It's not for me. That night, Beatrice had dinner alone in her apartment, thinking about the conversation. There was something in Benjamin's voice when he talked about that woman, a sadness he was trying to hide. Tell me, what city and country are you watching this video from? I'm going to read all the comments. On Wednesday, they spent the whole day rehearsing, practicing how to greet each other, how to talk about each other. Little gestures of affection that a real couple would have. Don't forget, Benjamin said. They'll be watching everything. How do you look at me? If it seems natural when I put my hand on your back. If we know details about each other's lives. At the end of the day, Beatrice felt exhausted, but more confident. Maybe they could pretend to be a happy couple for 3 days. One last thing Benjamin said as she was leaving. Thank you for agreeing. I know it's a lot to ask. Thank you for the opportunity, she replied. But as she walked home, Beatrice couldn't stop thinking about the sad smile she had seen on his face when he talked about his past. And she wondered what other secrets Benjamin Corral was hiding behind that facade of a successful businessman. The trip to Puerto Vallarta began quietly. Benjamin drove the Mercedes through the mountains of Jalisco while Beatrice watched the landscape change from countryside to coast. She wore a simple navy blue dress and had her hair pulled back in a low bun, following his instructions about discreet elegance. Nervous? Benjamin asked after 2 hours on the road. A little. And you? Very, she admitted, which surprised her. I haven't seen my family in over a year, and I've never lied to them like this. They arrived at the hotel in the late afternoon breeze. It was even more luxurious than Beatrice had imagined. Oceanfront, infinity pool, uniformed staff who treated them like royalty. Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Corral, said the receptionist. Your suite is ready. Beatrice felt a knot in her stomach when she heard Mrs. Corral. Suddenly, it all seemed very real. The suite had 2 separate bedrooms, as Benjamin had promised, but she noticed that he seemed tense as he arranged his clothes. What time are the others arriving? She asked. My parents and sister should arrive at 7. Dinner is at 8 in the hotel restaurant. He checked his watch. We have an hour to get ready. Beatrice took a shower and put on the dress she had bought especially for that night. Black, simple, but elegant. When she left the bedroom, she found Benjamin waiting in the suite's living room. He was wearing a dark suit and had combed his hair back. You look beautiful, he said. And for the first time, he seemed genuinely nervous. You look very handsome, too. They went down to the restaurant holding hands, as they had practiced. Beatrice felt his hand trembling slightly in hers. The Corral family was already seated at a table overlooking the ocean. Beatrice recognized Camilla immediately. Tall, dark hair, confident smile. Next to her was a Herrero man, who must have been the groom, and an older couple who could only be Benjamin's parents. "Benjamin!" Camilla shouted, running to hug her brother. "I thought you weren't coming." "How could I miss my favorite sister's wedding?" he replied, hugging her back. "Your only sister," Camilla laughed, and then turned to Beatrice. "And you must be the famous mystery wife, Beatrice Luna." "I mean Beatrice Corral," she said, extending her hand. "Luna Corral, what a beautiful name," said Benjamin's mother, an elegant lady with gray hair. "I'm Lucia, his mother, and this is my husband, Rodrigo." During dinner, Beatrice was surprised at how easily the lies came to her. She talked about her job at the non-existent Horizonte de Mexico, about how she met Benjamin at the art exhibition of the intimate wedding they had at the civil registry. "You look very happy together," said Rodrigo, watching Benjamin pour wine for Beatrice. "We are," replied Benjamin, looking at her with a tenderness that seemed too real. After dinner, they walked along the beach. The family had retired to rest, leaving them alone. "You were perfect," said Benjamin. "My mom already likes you a lot. You're really cool, different from what I imagined." "What? I thought they would be tougher, like you usually are at work." Benjamin stopped walking and looked at her. "How am I usually? Distant, serious, always formal." Beatrice instantly regretted her words. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No, you're right." She started walking again. "I learned to be that way. In the business world, you can't show weakness. But with family, it's different, isn't it? It always has been. When I was a kid, we spent every summer here in Puerto Vallarta. My dad rented a house on the beach and we stayed for 2 whole months. Camilla and I built sandcastles. We ran on the beach until nightfall." His voice became nostalgic. "Those were the best years of my life. Why did you stop coming?" "Because I grew up. Because I took over the business. Because I stopped believing that happiness could be so simple." They continued walking in silence until they reached the end of the beach. There was a small chapel lit by torches. "Camilla is getting married here tomorrow," Benjamin said. "She always dreamed of getting married in front of the sea." Beatrice looked at the chapel, the sea sparkling under the full moon, and the man beside her, who suddenly seemed very different from the boss she had known for 3 years. "Benjamin, can I ask you a personal question? I think we're past the point of formalities. The woman you talked about, the one you almost married, was she the one in the photo in your office?" He was silent for so long that Beatrice thought she had gone too far, but then he nodded. "Yes, her name was Isabel. She sat down on a large rock. We had been dating since college. She wanted to get married, have children, build a life together. I was building the company, working 18 hours a day. I always said that when the company was solid, we would have time for ourselves. And what happened? One day she told me she was tired of waiting for a life that might never come. She said I had chosen money over love. She looked out at the sea, and she was right." Beatrice sat down next to him, feeling that she was finally getting to know the real Benjamin Corral. And for some reason she couldn't explain, her heart tightened when she saw him so vulnerable. The wedding day dawned perfectly. Beatrice woke up to the sound of the waves and found a red rose and a note on the living room table. "Thank you for being here with me." "B," she smiled, touching the delicate petals. In the last 2 days, she had seen a side of Benjamin she never imagined existed. The man who was affectionate with his family, who laughed at his brother-in-law's jokes and helped his mother choose a necklace for the wedding. The ceremony would be at 5 p.m. Beatrice spent the morning at the beach with Lucia and Camilla, listening to family stories while the bride had her nails done. "Benjamin was very different as a child," Lucia said, "always smiling, inventing games. After he started working with his dad, he became very serious. Mom thinks he needs someone to make him laugh again," Camilla said, winking at Beatrice. "And from what we saw last night, it looks like he found her." Beatrice felt herself blushing. It was so obvious that she was starting to love Benjamin more than she should. In the afternoon, she dressed carefully, putting on the pink dress she had bought, braiding her hair to one side, and putting on Benjamin's grandmother's ring. In the mirror for a moment, she really looked like a happy wife getting ready for her sister-in-law's wedding. Benjamin was waiting for her in the suite's living room, impeccable in a light gray suit. You look stunning, he said, and something in his voice made her heart race. Thank you, you look very elegant too. They walked down to the beach hand in hand. The chapel was decorated with white and pink flowers, and there were about 50 guests seated on wooden chairs on the sand. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange and pink. During the ceremony, Beatrice saw Camilla walk down the aisle to the sound of violins. The bride was radiant, and the groom Bruno couldn't stop smiling. It was the kind of pure happiness she had always dreamed of finding. They look beautiful, don't they? Benjamin whispered in her ear. They're perfect together. Camilla always knew what she wanted. Ever since she was little, she said she was going to get married on the beach and have 3 children. Beatrice glanced at him. There was something melancholic in his expression. What did you want when you were little? To be happy, he replied without taking his eyes off the bride and groom. But at some point I forgot how. When the father said, "May you kiss the bride," everyone applauded. Benjamin pulled Beatrice closer to him, and for a moment she felt as if they really were a couple sharing a special moment. The party was on the hotel terrace. There was live music, a seemingly endless seafood table, and a dance floor overlooking the ocean. Beatrice had more fun than she expected, dancing with Rodrigo, chatting with Benjamin's aunts, and helping to serve the cake. She's perfect for you, Camilla said to Benjamin as they danced. She makes you feel like yourself again. It's only for 3 days, Camilla. 3 days can change a whole life, her sister replied. Ask me and Bruno. We met at a party that was only supposed to last 1 night. Waiter Beatrice was on the balcony of the suite looking at the city lights when Benjamin joined her. Tired? He asked. No, it was a really nice day. Your sister was radiant, and so were you. Everyone commented on how natural and affectionate you are. He leaned on the railing beside her. You know what's strange? What? During these 3 days, for the first time in years, I felt at peace, as if I wasn't pretending to be someone I'm not. Beatrice turned to look at him. In the dim light, with the moonlight reflecting on his face, Benjamin looked vulnerable and handsome in a way that took her breath away. Maybe you weren't pretending, she said softly. Beatrice, I know. Tomorrow we go back to Guadalajara and everything goes back to normal. You go back to being the boss and I go back to being the employee. She smiled, trying to look relaxed. But thank you for letting me be part of your family these past few days. Benjamin took a step toward her. For a moment, Beatrice thought he was going to say something important or maybe even kiss her, but he just touched her face gently. Thank you, Beatrice, for everything. She nodded and went to her room, closing the door behind her. Outside, she heard Benjamin sigh deeply. That night, lying in bed looking at the ring on her finger, Beatrice knew she had fallen in love with the man she had met in those 3 days. Not the distant boss, but Benjamin, who laughed at his brother-in-law's jokes, who danced with his mother, who looked at the sea with nostalgia in his eyes. And she also knew that in a few hours she would have to pretend that none of that had happened. The return trip was different from the outward journey. Benjamin was quiet, focused on the road, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. Beatrice looked at the landscape through the window, pretending to admire the mountains, when in reality she was trying to record every moment of the last 3 days before they became just memories. Your family is incredible, she said when they stopped to eat in tequila. They loved you. My mom is already planning the next family reunion. What are you going to tell her? Benjamin played with his food without eating. The truth is that it didn't work out between us. The words sounded more painful than he intended, and the two remained silent for the rest of the meal. They arrived in Guadalajara at dusk. When Benjamin parked the car in front of Beatrice's apartment, neither of them moved to get out. The money will be in your account tomorrow, he said. Thank you. She took off his grandmother's ring and held it out in the palm of her hand. Keep it, Benjamin said. It was made to be worn by someone who values it. I can't accept it. It's a family heirloom, and you were part of my family for 3 days. He closed her hand over the ring. Please. Beatrice got out of the car without looking back. She knew that if she did, she might not be able to keep her composure. On Monday, she returned to work as if nothing had happened. Benjamin was already in the office when she arrived, talking on the phone about contracts and meetings. When he saw her, he just greeted her politely. Good morning, Beatrice. Good morning, Mr. Corral. And so they returned to formalities as if Puerto Vallarta had been just a dream. But something had changed. Beatrice noticed that Benjamin sometimes looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, and she herself was surprised to find herself paying attention to details she had previously ignored. How he smiled when he talked on the phone with his sister. How tired he looked after difficult meetings. How kind he was to the old gardener who took care of the plants. 2 weeks later, while serving dinner for a business meeting, she overheard a conversation that left her confused. "So is it true that you got married, Benjamin?" asked Ivan, a longtime partner. "Where did you hear that?" "Your mom told my mom. She said she met your wife at Camilla's wedding, that she's a lovely girl." Beatrice saw Benjamin become uncomfortable. "It's complicated," he replied vaguely. That night, after the guests had left, Beatrice was finishing up in the kitchen when Benjamin appeared. "Do you need help?" he asked. "No, thanks. I'm almost done." "Beatrice, about what you heard tonight." "I didn't hear anything," she lied. "And my mom is telling everyone that we're married. I haven't had the courage to tell her the truth yet." "You're going to have to tell her at some point." "I know. It's just that she leaned on the counter. I've never seen my mom so happy." "She's always worried that I'm alone." Beatrice stopped washing the dishes and looked at him. "Benjamin, you can't pretend to have a wife forever." "I know." He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. "It's just that in Puerto Vallarta, everything seems so natural, so easy, as if we really were what we were." "Never mind, forget it." But Beatrice couldn't forget it. That night, lying in bed, she thought about Benjamin's unspoken words, how he had looked at her during the conversation, the tension between them since they returned from their trip. The next day, she decided to take action. "We need to talk," she said, entering his office without knocking. Benjamin looked up from his papers, surprised. "About what?" "About us, about this strange situation we're in, about you lying to your family and me lying to myself." "Beatrice, let me speak." She sat down in the chair opposite him. "Those 3 days in Puerto Vallarta weren't just work for me. I fell in love with you, not with my boss, but with the man I met there, the one who dances with his mother and tells funny stories about his childhood." Benjamin remained silent, but his eyes never left hers. "And I think you felt something too," Beatrice continued. "That's why it's so hard for us to go back to how we were before, because we discovered that we can be more than boss and employee. We can be companions, partners. Beatrice, don't you understand? My life is complicated, full of responsibilities. And you think mine isn't? I've been working since I was 16 to help my mom. I left school to take care of her when she got sick. I've never had the easy life you imagine." Benjamin got up and went to the window. "Isabel said the same thing, that I could do more than just work and responsibilities. And I chose work. I hurt her, Beatrice, and I'm going to end up hurting you too. The difference is that Isabel wanted to change you. I fell in love with who you already are." Beatrice also stood up. "But if you can't believe you deserve to be happy, I can't stay here pretending we're boss and employee when we know we're so much more than that." "What are you saying? That I'm going to quit? I found another job. Next week I start as a receptionist at a hotel." Benjamin turned to her in surprise. "You don't have to do that?" "Yes, I do, because I can't work for you knowing how I feel, and you can't see me as an employee knowing what happened between us." She walked toward the door, but he called her back. "Beatrice, wait." She turned around, hoping he would finally say the words they both knew were true. "Your last day will be Friday," he said, sitting back down behind his desk. "I'll prepare your letter of recommendation." Beatrice felt her heart break. She nodded and left the office without saying another word. The following days passed in painful silence. Benjamin left early and arrived late, avoiding running into her. Beatrice did her task mechanically, counting the hours until this torture would end. On Thursday night, she was putting away her personal belongings when she heard voices in the living room. It was Camilla, who had arrived unexpectedly. "Where's Beatrice?" she asked. "I want to invite you both to dinner tomorrow." "She doesn't work here anymore," Benjamin replied. "What do you mean you haven't moved out yet?" "No, Camilla, we're over." There was a long silence. "Benjamin Corral, you're an idiot," Camilla finally said. "That woman really loves you." Anyone with eyes could see that in Puerto Vallarta. It's complicated. It's very simple. You're afraid to be happy because you think you don't deserve it. But she chose you, Benjamin. Even though she knows all your flaws, She chose you. Beatrice left through the back door, unable to listen any longer. But Camilla's words echoed in her head all night. On Friday, her last day, Beatrice arrived early to leave everything in order. She found a letter on the kitchen table with her name on it. Inside was the letter of recommendation and a check for the equivalent of 3 months' salary. There was also a note: sorry for being a coward. You deserve someone who has the courage to fight for happiness. Benjamin. She folded the note and put it in her bag. At 5 p.m., she was finishing cleaning for the last time when she heard footsteps in the kitchen. It was Benjamin with 2 cups of coffee. I thought you might like to have a coffee before you leave, he said. They sat at the kitchen table in silence. Beatrice noticed that he looked tired, with deep circles under his eyes. Thank you for the letter of recommendation and the extra money. It's the least I can do, Benjamin. Can I give you some advice? He nodded. Stop being afraid to be happy. You're a good, generous, intelligent man. You deserve to find someone who loves you for who you are. She touched his hand on the table. Just don't let the past define your future. Benjamin intertwined his fingers with hers. What if I told you I already found that person? Beatrice's heart skipped a beat. I'd say that person needs to know, Beatrice. He took a deep breath. I spent the whole week thinking about what you said about being partners, and I realized you're right. In Puerto Vallarta, for the first time in years, I felt complete. Benjamin, let me finish. He squeezed her hand. Yes, I'm afraid. Afraid of hurting you like I hurt Isabel. Afraid of not being the man you deserve. But I'm more afraid of spending the rest of my life wondering what might have been. Beatrice felt her eyes fill with tears. What are you saying? That I don't want you to leave. Not as an employee, but as... He smiled, and it was the same smile she had seen for the first time 3 weeks ago. As my partner in everything. And your family. The lie. It wasn't a lie. At least not the last few days. He got up and knelt beside her chair. Beatrice Luna, will you really marry me? Not to pretend with my family, but because I love you and want to build a life with you. Beatrice looked at the man kneeling in front of her. The same man who 3 weeks ago had made her a business proposal was now making her a proposal from the heart. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. Benjamin stood up and kissed her, and it was as if all the pieces of a puzzle had finally fallen into place. 6 months later, they were married in the same chapel in Puerto Vallarta where Camilla had been married. This time there were no lies, only the simple, pure truth of the love they had found when they least expected it. During the party, dancing on the same floor where they had pretended to be a couple, Benjamin whispered in Beatrice's ear, "Thank you for teaching me that sometimes love comes disguised as a job opportunity." "Thank you for showing me that true love is worth waiting for," she replied. And as they danced under the stars of the Mexican Pacific, they both knew they had found not only love, but the courage to fight for happiness. 3 weeks after the wedding, Benjamin and Beatrice walked hand in hand through the cobbled streets of San Miguel de Allende. They had chosen this colonial city for their honeymoon because they wanted something different from the beaches where it all began, something that was just theirs, without memories of the past or pressures of the future. I never thought it would be so easy, Beatrice said, stopping in front of a pink church that glowed in the morning sun. What, being happy? She turned to him in a simple white dress and flat sandals. For so many years, I thought happiness was something complicated, that you had to work hard to earn it. Benjamin smiled and touched her face gently. And now I know that sometimes it's right in front of us, disguised as a crazy proposal from a desperate boss. They laughed together and the sound echoed in the empty streets of the morning. That afternoon, sitting on the terrace of the colonial hotel where they were staying, Beatrice showed Benjamin the notebook where she had begun to write her memoirs. She almost ignored him when he called her that strange name. She read aloud, "This is how our story begins." "And how does it end?" he asked curiously. Beatrice looked at the sapphire ring she now wore every day, at the man who had learned to choose love over fear, at the new life they were building together. "It ends with 2 cowards who found courage in each other," she said, writing the last words in the notebook. "And they discovered that the happy ending is waiting on the other side of fear." Benjamin kissed her forehead and whispered, "Our story is just beginning, Beatrice Corral." And under the golden sky of San Miguel de Allende, They knew that some of the best love stories begin with the word yes, whispered at the right moment to the right person, at the moment when you finally have the courage to believe in happiness. Because sometimes it's just about choosing a new path. And when two people choose to walk together, they discover that destiny can be even more beautiful than they ever dreamed. If you like this story, comment below, share it with your friends, and subscribe to hear the next ones.